Quick as lightning, Richter Tarkin leaped back out of reach of the king's sword. He was no coward, and would have fought single-handed against Tyrion and the dwarf, but he could not take on the unicorn and eagle as well. He knew the eagles could fly into your face and peck your eyes, and that no man is a match for a unicorn close up, for it rears on its hind legs as it falls upon you, and you have the hooves, horn, and teeth to deal with. So he rushed in the crowd and stood shouting, to me, warriors of Tisroc, may he live forever. To me, all loyal Narnians, lest the wrath of Tashlin fall upon you." Two things happened as Richter was shouting. The ape had not realized the danger as quickly as Tarkin. He remained beside the fire for a second, starting at the newcomers. When Tyrion rushed up and grabbed him by the scruff, he raced back to the stable, yelling, "Open the door." Pagan opened it. "Go and drink your own medicine. Shift." Tyrion threw the ape into the darkness, but as the dwarf was closing the door, a greenish-blue light shone out from the inside. The earth shook, and there was a strange noise, like a monstrous bird. The beast moaned and howled and called out, "Taslan, hide us from him." Many of them fell down and hid their faces. No one except Farsight the eagle, who was the best eyes of anything living, noticed the face of Richter Tarkin. What Farsight saw was surprise and fear, just like everyone else. "There goes one," thought Farsight, "who had called on the gods he does not believe in. How will it be with him if they have really come?" Then a third thing happened. That was the only beautiful thing that night. Every single talking dog in the meeting came bounding and barking joyously to the king's side, and thought they were talking dogs. They were just as doggy as they could be, jumping into the shoulders of the humans and knocking them down. They licked their faces and talked all at once. "Welcome, welcome. We'll help. We'll help. Help. Show us how to help. Show us how. How? How?" It was lovely. It made you want to cry. Then a moment later, several little animals came, pattering up, squealing with joy. See, we're here." After the little animals came, the bear and boar and Eustace began to feel that everything might be all right, but Tyrion saw how very few of the animals had moved, and he called out, "We dare it!" whimpered dozens of voices. "Taslan would be angry. Shield us from Taslan." "Where are all the talking horses?" asked Tyrion. We've seen, squealed the mice. "The ape has made them work. They're all tied down at the bottom of the hill." "Then all you little ones," said Tyrion, "you nibblers and gnawers and nutcrackers, away with you as fast as you can. Scamper and see if the horses are on our side. And if they are, get your teeth into the ropes and gnaw till the horses are free, and bring them hither." "With the good will, sire," came all the voices. And with a whisk of their tail they were off. Tyrion smiled for mere love as he saw them go, but it was time to be thinking of the others. Richter Tarkin was giving his orders. "Forward, take all of them alive if you can, and hurl them into the stable, or drive them into it. When they are all in the wheel, put fire to it, and make it an offering to the great god Tosh." "Ha," said Farsight to himself. "So that is how he hopes to win Tosh's pardon for his unbelief." The enemy line was now moving forward, and Tyrion barely had time to give his orders. "Out on the left, Jill, and try to shoot all you may before they reach us. Boar and bear next to her. Pagan on my left, Eustace on my right. Hold the right wing, Jewel. Stand by him puzzled, and use your hooves. Hover and strike Farsight.
You dogs, just behind us, going among them after the swordplay has begun. Aslan to our aid. Eustace stood with his heart beating terribly, hoping he would be brave. He had never seen anything that made his blood turn so cold as the line of dark-faced, bright-eyed men. He heard arrows on his left, and the men began to fall, and again more arrows and more men falling. "Oh, well done, daughter," came Tyrion's voice. Then the enemy was upon them. Eustace could never remember the next 2 minutes. It was like a dream until he heard Rishida's voice calling out from the distance. "Retire! Back hither and reform!" Then Eustace came to his senses and saw their columns scampering back, but not all of them. 2 lay dead, piercing by Jewel's horn, 1 by Tyrion's sword. The fox lay dead at his own feet, and he wondered if he killed it. But our side had its losses too. 3 dogs were killed. The bear lay on the ground, moving feebly. The bear mumbled in its throaty voice, I don't understand." He laid his head down on the grass as quietly as a child going to sleep, and he never moved again. The first attack has failed. Eustace could not be happy about it. He was thirsty, and his arm ached. As the Calamians went back, the dwarves began jeering at them. "Had enough, darkies? Do you like it? Why doesn't your great Tarkin go and fight himself instead of sending you to be killed? Poor darkies." "Dwarfs!" cried Tyrion. "Come here and use your swords, not your tongues. There is still time, dwarfs of Narnia. You can't fight well, I know. Come back to your legion." "Yah!" sneered the dwarfs. "Not likely. You're just as big humbugs as the other lot. We don't want any kings. The dwarfs are for the dwarfs. Boo!" Then the big Calamine drums started to sound. Tyrion knew what it meant. There were other Calamine troops near, and Risha Tarkin was calling them to his aid. Tyrion and Jewel looked at one another sadly. They had just begun to hope that they would win, but it would be all over with if new enemies arrived. Tyrion gazed despairingly around. Several Narnians standing with the Calamines, whether through treachery or fear of Tashlan. Others were sitting still, not likely to join the side, and some had fled during the fighting. The drum sounded again, then another sound began to mix with it. "Listen," said Jewel. "Look," said Farsight. It was the talking horses of Narnia. The gnawers and nibblers had done their work. Suddenly, before any cheers could be heard, the air was full of hissing arrows. It was the dwarfs. They were shooting the horses. Dwarfs are deadly archers. No one of the noble beasts reached the king. "Little swine!" shrieked Eustace. "Dirty, filthy, treacherous little brutes! Shall I run after those dwarfs, sire, and spit 10 of them on my horn at each plunge? But Tyrion with his face as stern as storm?" said Jewel. "Stand fast, Jewel. To Jill, if you must weep, sweetheart, turn your face aside and see you wet not your bowstring. In peace, Eustace, do not scold, like a kitchen girl. No warrior scolds. Courteous words or else hard knocks are his only language." But the dwarfs jeered back at Eustace. Risha Tarkin was still talking to his men, doubtless making arrangements for the next attack. The drum boomed on. Then, to the horror of Tyrion and his friends, there came from a far distance an answering drum. Another body of Calamines had heard Risha's signal and were coming to support him. You would not know it from his face, but Tyrion had given up all. "Listen," he whispered. "We must attack now, before yonder miscreant is strengthened by their friend." "Bethink you, sire," said Pagan, "that here We have the good wooden wall of the stable at our backs. If we advance, shall we not be encircled and get sword points between our shoulders? I would say as you do, dwarf, said Tyrion. We're not there very plan to force us into the stable. The further we are from his daily door, the better. The king is right, said Farsight. Away from his accursed stable, and whatever goblin lives inside it at all costs.
Yes, do let's, said Eustace. I'm coming to hate the very sight of it.
Good, said Tyrion. Now look yonder on to our left. You see a great rock that gleams white like marble in the firelight. First we will fall upon those Charlemagnes. You, maiden, shall move on your left and shoot as fast as ever you may into their ranks, and you, eagle, fly at their face from the right. Meanwhile we others will be charging them. When we are so close, Jill, that you can no longer shoot at them for fear of striking us, go back to the White Rock and wait. You others, keep your ears wide even in the fighting. We must put them to the flight in a few minutes, or else not at all, for we are fewer than they. As soon as I call back, then rush to join Jill at the White Rock, where we shall have protection behind us and can breathe a while. Now, be off, Jill! Feeling terribly alone, Jill ran out about 20 feet and set an arrow to be her string. She wished her hands were not shaking. That's a rotten shot, she said as her first arrow flew over the enemy's head. But as she had another arrow ready the next moment, she knew that speed was what mattered. She saw Farsight darting into the face of the Calamians. One by one the men dropped their swords to defend their eyes. Then Jill's arrows hit a man, and another hit a Narnian wolf who had joined the enemy. But seconds later she had to stop because Tyrion and his party were rushing on their enemies. The Calamians were unprepared because of Jill and Farsight's destruction. "Oh, well done! Well done!" shouted Jill. The king's party was cutting their way into the enemy. The unicorn was tossing men, and even Eustace seemed to be fighting brilliantly. It looked like they would win when Jill realized that though the Calamians were falling at each sword stroke, they never seemed to get any fewer. In fact, there were more, and more were added every second. They were coming from every side. There were so many of them, she could not see her friends. Then she heard Tyrion's voice, crying, "Back! Back to the rock!" The enemy had been reinforced. The drum had done its work.